And welcome to the special edition of Hannity. Now, we've heard a lot of talk over the past few weeks about how the American people do not want the U.S. intervening in Syria. So tonight, for the full hour, we are giving the show up to you, the American people, to hear what the average citizen has to say. Now, pollster Frank Luntz assembled a bipartisan focus group to debate the issue of Syria and much, much more. So let's go out to Washington, D.C. and get right to the group and Frank.
I've been doing testing of world leaders now for about 2 decades. And in all that time, I don't think I've ever had a score as bad as this. Let's take a look.
We're not sure that chemical weapons, even though you have seen the videotape, even though you've seen the bodies, even though your own officials have been there.
I haven't finished. Our soldiers in another area were attacked chemically. Our soldiers. They went to the hospital as casualties because of chemical weapons. But in the area where they said the government used chemical weapons, we only had video and we only have pictures and allegations. We're not there. Our forces, our police, our institutions don't exist. How can you talk about what happened if you don't have evidences?
Do any of you trust him? Any of you?
No.
So what should we do with him?
Treat him like the dictator that he is. He's killed 100,000 of his own people. You got to marginalize him and somehow get a plan to get him out of there.
Do you want to kill him?
No.
Who wants to kill him here? Raise your hands if you want to kill him. You actually want to see him executed?
Yeah, he killed 100,000 of his own people. Why should he live?
Why should it be the U.S.'s decision who lives and who dies?
Well, we're doing that now. Obama has a hit list.
Who's replacing him? Yeah, seriously, who takes his place? It could be worse.
We are a constitutional republic, not a constitutional democracy. Assad isn't part of a constitutional republic. He doesn't matter. We can't, but he still controls a sovereign country. We don't have the right to go in and alter that sovereign country.
Do you guys agree with that?
Yes.
We can't trust him.
Go ahead.
If he is using chemicals of mass destruction against his own people, I suspect that he is a bit crazy. But we can't just go and annihilate a dictator, and there has to be some sort of diplomatic approach to it prior to diplomatic, and also yes, treating him with dignity and respect. We're never going to get anywhere if we try to strong arm every dictator.
I just don't think that we do have an opportunity for diplomacy in this area of the country with these type of people.
The problem is that how do you treat somebody with respect when they lie to your face? He sat there and he talked to the reporter and he said, I can't confirm that we have weapons and then just a couple days ago he says, I'll give them all up.
But I don't understand. If people think he's crazy and he's a dictator, then why don't we bomb him? Why does everyone disagree with using force?
Go ahead.
Right now we got to worry about the splinter in our own eye before we start worrying about the plank in someone else's eye.
What does that mean?
I don't understand. Hasn't been around for decades.
We have so many issues right now in this
we're
country.
Always going to
we're
have
talking about
issues.
right now taking vengeance, and vengeance is not to deal with our
military. It's
military.
not about vengeance, though. It's
after the fact. It's a moral obligation when people are alive. After the fact, and this is after the fact.
An extreme line on the world stage.
We don't know. There's no conclusive evidence. He didn't give any conclusive evidence. He did not give any conclusive evidence.
The game is there's never been leadership. Never been leadership here. Yeah. If he had started off, we would have understood it. If he went in there and did what he was supposed to do or didn't go in there and say it, his leadership would have helped a heck of a lot. He needed just to make a commitment. He needed not to waffle back and forth and back and forth.
To do what? He could have acted
to do whatever he wants to do. To demand what he wanted to do and do what's going on. That's what Bush did.
Jason.
Bush went in there and did what he was supposed to do, whether he thought we agreed or we didn't.
The problem in Syria is the same problem with the rest of the Middle East. There are no better options. Iraq, we're not better off for having gone to Iraq. In fact, we destabilized it and made Iran the power in that region. Afghanistan might be marginally better off.
Therefore,
let sleeping dogs lie. We need to stay out of it. If we don't have, because we don't have a better result than what they have.
It's a revolution. We have to
let it play out. So we should not be involved at all.
Don't interfere with the revolution, but you have to take the chemical weapon option off the table for Assad.
And how do you do that if you don't get tough with him?
They're saying that we need to have an agreement that we can verify President Obama said it.
If you
to get the
cannot
chemical
trust
weapons.
Assad and he is using chemical weapons, we play on a world stage. The United States is part of a big global conglomerate. We are not alone. We have to act. It can affect
I think killing your own people and gassing them is a war crime. And if we believe that, let's build a real coalition of international partners and go in and overthrow him.
Correct. I just feel like we're the Lone Ranger. You know, we're out here on all by ourselves. There's nobody else coming to aid and assist us.
Can I ask you a direct question?
Sure.
That's one of the reasons why people voted for Barack Obama in 2008, is that he would improve America's standing across the globe. What does it say? What does it say that this president, who was elected to reestablish relations, has no global support? What does that say?
It feels like he's being punked on the world stage right now.
He's being punked?
That's the same thing I said. Yeah. He's had global support before. He had global support
Actually
with Libya.
punked other countries in thinking that there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So now people are tired of crying wolf. I think at this point we're very war weary, but something needs to be done.
Well, that's the point. That is the point. We're trying to figure out. You watched him. You watched how Assad responded. We need to wrap up.
We also know he's working with Iran, trying to destabilize Iraq. And somebody down here earlier said, we don't know if we'll get a democracy if he goes. We don't. But we know if he stays, we're going to have a dictatorship. And we know he's going to be working against the Americans in Iraq, in Iran, in Afghanistan, and anywhere else in the Middle East to destabilize.
Who agrees with that? Who disagrees with that? So even on something so clear-cut, we still don't have a consensus. And you know what? As this debate goes on, I don't think we are ever going to have a consensus. The president's going to have to act. Congress is going to have to decide whether or not to support. And let's hope that something happens.
And thanks, Frank. Coming up, the group tackles Congress's role in all of this and how they think our commander-in-chief is doing in that role. By the way, we always want to hear from you. Check out our companion site, HannityLive.foxnews.com, and we'll continue. And welcome back to the special edition of Hannity, featuring a bipartisan focus group of Americans. So let's head back out to Washington, D.C., where pollster Frank Luntz is standing by. Frank.
The question for the American people is not just what is the role of the president, but what should Congress be doing? Should it voice its will? Should it represent the people who put them in office? Should they do some sort of comparison between the two? The president spoke about the role of Congress. Let's take a look at how our group responded with their dials.
Even though I possess the authority to order military strikes, I believed it was right, in the absence of a direct or imminent threat to our security, to take this debate to Congress. I believe our democracy is stronger when the president acts with the support of Congress. And I believe that America acts more effectively abroad when we stand together. This is especially true after a decade that put more and more war-making power in the hands of the president and more burdens on the shoulders of our troops, while sidelining the people's representatives from the critical decisions about when we use force.
So tell me, what is the role of Congress? What should Congress do?
Congress needs to evaluate what the president wants to do, ask questions, have hearings, and make a vote on a resolution on the pact.
But they don't have to support him.
They do not have to support them. I think they should, because we need to show a unified front to the world community, but I don't think they have to support him now.
And I vote for my congressional representatives not so they'll vote exactly how I want them to all the time, but so they will make the best informed decision, because I don't have all of the information all the time that they do.
For once, I'm glad to see Congress having a debate that doesn't fall along party lines, so they don't all wake up in the morning and doing what their leadership says. I think it's refreshing.
It's refreshing that everyone seems to be voting no.
There are a few. Congressman from Virginia, and I wish I could remember his name. He was being interviewed on the radio, and he said, my constituents all believe that we shouldn't go into this bombing. And then suddenly he says, but that being said, I'm going to vote for it. I mean, that's ridiculous.
We have Congress for a reason, and that's to listen to the people. We have the Senate to listen to the president. Congress is supposed to listen to the people. Let them listen to the people. Let us give them advice. If they don't, vote their ass out.
And I think what's exciting that's going on here is because we are getting information from all different sources that you have liberals agreeing with super conservatives. You have all the Tea Party is working with the ACLU with what's going on right now, because we're getting more and more information from various sources and we're not just listening to the one official line. That's, to me, what's actually exciting, because all different types, independents, Republicans, Democrats are actually agreeing on things.
So help me here.
Like not going into Syria.
You have John Boehner and Nancy Pelosi on the same side.
That's scary.
The last time that happened was never. And then you have, it seems like, a majority of both political parties on the other side.
Yes.
What's going on?
Well, the problem is I think there's a lot more robust discussion amongst the people. It's less robust in Congress because they're mostly still driven by party, or they're driven by their key constituencies who really don't represent most voters.
They're professional politicians.
So until that changes, the vote in Congress is going to be the same things. It's going to be scary.
Well, I don't think there's going to be a vote.
Why didn't they all say this is so important? Obama thinks this is really crazy important. Why don't we get back there? Why did they?
Why do you think they didn't?
Why didn't they come back? Because they really didn't want to. They didn't want to have to vote on it.
Exactly. That's exactly why they don't want to have to go on record on what they do or don't want to do on this issue, because re-election. Bingo.
Isn't that their job?
Yeah. They don't want to leave.
Yeah, no. In this case, Congress is, to me, less trustworthy because there's so much politicking involved, and they're much more concerned about getting reelected, whereas the president, he's, in a sense, this is his last term. He's a bit of a lame duck. So I trust his decision-making a little bit more on this.
So I want to vote from all of you. Who do you trust more? Congress, the president? You trust them both, or you trust none of them? Who trusts the president more than Congress? Raise your hands. Who trusts Congress more than the president? Raise your hands. Not too many. Who trusts both of them?
Neither of them.
Two of you. And who trusts neither of them?
Neither.
Okay. Well, we got a problem. We got a crisis in confidence. And the American people have spoken.
And more with Frank and the group right after the break. So how do they think President Obama is doing as commander-in-chief? The answer may surprise you. And welcome back to the special edition of Hannity. The crisis in Syria and the decision of what to do there could end up being the most important moment of President Obama's second term. But how's he handling it? Well, let's see what Frank Luntz's bipartisan focus group thinks about the commander-in-chief.
The president's speech continues to elicit divided opinion across America. When he talked about his role as commander-in-chief, we saw that division right here with our voters. Let's take a look at how they dialed that clip.
This is not a world we should accept. This is what's at stake. And that is why, after careful deliberation, I determined that it is in the national security interests of the United States to respond to the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons through a targeted military strike. The purpose of this strike would be to deter Assad from using chemical weapons, to degrade his regime's ability to use them, and to make clear to the world that we will not tolerate their use. That's my judgment as Commander-in-Chief.
He was very clear about his role as Commander-in-Chief. So tell me, as an average American, how would you, and you voted for him, how would you describe in a word or phrase Barack Obama as Commander-in-Chief?
Right now, weak.
Indecisive.
I'd say he was effective.
Embarrassing.
I'd say average.
Middle of the road to average to better.
He's demonstrated restraint and leadership.
Tempered with caution.
No leadership, vacillating and weak.
I'm going to start with your reaction. Why? That's pretty positive compared to how the rest of the group has responded. Tell me why.
Well, he has demonstrated a lot of restraint over the past couple of years and a lot of leadership. He's engaging Congress, so I think he's done a terrific job under the circumstances.
Your reaction?
Embarrassing.
Why?
There was once a time when America was the leader of the world, and when our president spoke, he had people behind him to follow.
There's the issue. Exercising restraints is fine, except from the start. A year ago, he started talking about a red line that he drew. He hasn't backed away from it, and now that the time has come to act, he's not acting.
But it was clear when he put that red line down, he never put a plan in place to back it up. And when it was crossed, now he's scrambling. That is not a commander-in-chief. That's not a forward strategic thinker.
Go ahead.
One of the problems is that the president governs by committee instead of making decisions.
I think he's being sensitive to the American people. I mean, he was very clear that he wanted to use airstrikes, and I was actually a bit committed or a bit convinced for a while during the speech that that's what we were going to do.
First of all, I want to say it's a little bit ironic that he got the Nobel Peace Prize, and now he's sitting there talking about bombing people. But the second thing is that there's a red line. He says if it's crossed, and it was crossed, what, 2-3 times now, and then he does nothing until the third time, and then he pushes it on Congress. It's embarrassing. It's indecisive.
Restraint and diplomacy do take strength, and it's hard for a lot of our population to recognize that. But more importantly, there have been many times in the history of this country where there's been civil unrest, like civil war between countries, and we've rushed in and not understood all the issues at stake. So all the things that people are saying he's vacillating is where he was trying to understand the situation. Now he's determined to deal with the human rights issues.
My thing is, and I'm going to address your point, if he was so, if you say he was so strong on a strike, then why didn't he strike? You know, that speech made him look weak.
He told us that Syrians shot off 6 rockets, and then there's evidence that chemical weapons were dispersed. Now, what is to tell us if he strikes, chemical are not going to be dispersed from our strikes?
I think it was really clear that he wanted to garner support of
when
Congress.
has he ever been clear?
He does not need Congress's permission to go
Just
in
because he
and
tells
strike.
us he's going to be clear doesn't make him clear.
But he was doing. I feel like Congress sort of stomped their feet like
There
little
you go, back to
children. Like it's
Congress
our,
again,
we
and you
want to
said you
say
don't
in
wanna be
this,
political.
and
Everything you say
instead,
is
and so what
political.
he did was he kind of threw them a bone. He didn't have to.
And now
but
he wants to throw them tomahawks.
But he said,
This is ridiculous.
he's trying to get. He did say the support of Congress makes it for a more unified front, and
yeah, he
I
went
believe
for that support when he attacked Libya
But that's
too,
what I
didn't
was
he?
saying. Now the more liberals are being like war hawks, and the more conservatives are restraining themselves and not wanting to go in.
I don't understand why left of center is now calling for military action.
Yes.
And right of center is saying we're not the world's policemen.
It's very interesting. It's
I
wonderful.
I feel like the drugs I took in college just kicked in.
As a registered independent, it's very exciting for me. I love what I'm watching, but I think the element of surprise is over.
As Commander-in-Chief, I think we got what we elected, somebody who's idealistic, that doesn't have leadership capabilities, doesn't have managerial capabilities, and this is what we're seeing. Somebody gets pushed out by the suits behind them.
We can't fault him for going to Congress and asking for support. I think it sets a good stage for his predecessor. It sets a good stage to be able to have Congress and the president work hand in hand. And he's right about that.
Why is this one the one time he wants to walk to Congress? Congress passes. No, let me give you an example.
Tons of different things.
Let me give you an example. Congress turns down Clean Air Act, and what happens? He does it by executive order, and somehow that's the will of the people.
You're
the will
absolutely
of the people
right.
said
He's-
no, and he went and did it anyway.
Like it or not, we are the world's policemen, and he's the leader of the world's policeman country, the only superpower left, the United States, and he vacillates on everything. He's no leader.
The
he needs to
problem
get out
is,
front.
if he believes that he has the power to do this without Congress, then he should have done it. And then, if he believes that Congress does have to do it, he shouldn't have said anything and then went to Congress.
Wait a minute. You're saying he should have ignored Congress.
If he truly believes, and some people do, that he has the unilateral right to go and bomb some other country without the approval of Congress, then he probably should have done it rather than make the comment first, then going back.
He doesn't want to take responsibility.
Go
That's
ahead.
leadership. I want a collective opinion. I want to get everybody's feedback into this decision that involves lives that we're going to put on the line for this country.
And our lives. I mean, the
He didn't. The president didn't. The president didn't vacillate with Osama bin Laden. He was criticized roundly for threatening to go after Obama in Pakistan. And he did that, which demonstrated a lot of.
You voted for Obama, and you've been one of the most critical people of him.
I am critical, and I am disappointed. However, I do see that he's in a tough spot. He's trying to make it work. I mean, obviously, we're not all going to hug it out, but some of these processes and the steps in order to get advisors, people that are going to be on the committee to voice and share their opinion, share data, and whatever it is.
We're playing word games.
Right. No, I hear you. It is frustrating. I'm the first one to say
we're playing word games right now. The president wants limited airstrikes. What he wants is the permission to do an act of war. We need to stop kidding ourselves. Syria has treaties with other countries, and those are the ones we should actually be thinking about right now.
Now, I want the American people to know that this is actually reflective of the country. 15 of you voted for Barack Obama. Only 11 of you voted for Mitt Romney. But the numbers here, the people who are opposed to it, are very similar to the numbers that we see in the polling data almost every day. And the division that you all reflect in this room are the divisions that we see in America every day.
And plenty more coming up tonight. Frank and the focus group will be right back. But first, don't forget, we want to hear from you. Log on to our special companion site, HannityLive.foxnews.com. Follow the live show, share your thoughts. Remember, HannityLive.foxnews.com, on Twitter @Sean Hannity. And welcome back to the special edition of Hannity. Now, in recent days, the president's handling of the situation in Syria has been described as confused and even embarrassing, leaving many to wonder whether or not America is on the decline internationally. Here to answer that question and much more, Frank Luntz and his bipartisan focus group of voters. Frank.
Polling data is divided. The American people are divided. The question is, where do we go from here? And the best way to look forward is, I want to ask you a very simple question. Show of hands. Is America going to be more safe or less safe over the next 10 years than it is today? Who thinks America is going to be more safe? Raise your hands. 6 of you. Why are you so optimistic?
Well, I'm so optimistic because of the fact that I know that we are a superpower. I just think we don't manage. Yeah, I really do, but I think we don't manage our power in a manner that will allow us to remain a superpower.
Why are you optimistic?
I think that people, particularly in my demographic and my age range, are becoming more involved. And
How
I'm
old are
optimistic because I'm 28. And I think that we are paying more attention and being more informed voters. And the more that we educate ourselves, the better decisions we're making, the better people we're putting in office, the better our national security is going to be.
And I disagree. I think the American people are more together than they've been in a long time. Like I was saying before, the ACLU is working with the Tea Party, and the liberals are not, liberals not want to go to the war, conservatives don't want to go to war. A lot of the disparate groups are coming together, and we're more informed, and we're waking up to what's going on with the leadership, and I think we need better leaders on both sides of the aisle.
But I think the country lacks leadership right now. The president's going to leave in 3 years. I think the country's going to turn a corner, and they're going to elect a leader, and I believe that we will be stronger.
He keeps saying that he lacks leadership. A leader reflects on what has happened in the past and analyzes it and tries to make the best decision. And this is exactly what he's done. He's looked at that the country does not want to go into another war. He knows that we've had 2 wars. He knows that the country was taken in one of those wars by false information. And what he's done is he's reflected and saying, okay, I have to balance all these issues.
So we've learned from the past. We learned from the mistakes in the past.
And this president, when he says he leads from behind, and when he wants to keep deferring to the United Nations, that's not leadership.
We have not learned because as long as conservatives turn a blind eye when their own party is not fiscally conservative, when their president says he is not going to engage in nation building, he does it twice, when he says he's going to be a compassionate conservative, and he really did not demonstrate that, then we haven't learned anything, just as the liberals who are jumping on the let's go fight bandwagon because it's their guy suggesting it more than anything, rather than a super strong conviction to do something about the helpless people in Syria.
So where are we going?
If we continue down this path, as the president said, that we are a constitutional democracy, when that's not what we were yesterday, according to what I believe, we're in serious trouble if the Congress does not get back their constitutional authority that they have willingly and readily subjected to the executive branch. We're in trouble. And
But Michael, Congress has an 11% job approval rating. Gaddafi had a 15% job approval rating.
Yeah, and if they will start taking back their constitutional authority and start representing the people again, I believe their approval rating will go up.
We do need a strong Congress because that's how our governmental system was designed. We need the checks and balances. But everyone who talks about this lack of leadership, everyone who stands out front is not a leader, and everyone who leads you over a cliff doesn't necessarily lead you where you want to go. So we live in a very complex world, and I think someone who takes the time to to really try to understand the myriad of complex issues that we never know that we're getting into is not somebody to be looked at as not a leader.
She was talking about how, you know, it was a good thing for Obama to take a step back and measure this all. Why didn't he do that in the first place? Why wasn't the first thing that he did diplomatic? If that doesn't work, then he wants to go to war and he takes it to Congress. If Congress won't act, then he acts. He's literally done it completely backwards, claiming he'll strike, then saying, oh wait, I'll go to Congress, then saying, oh wait, let's do diplomacy.
Even though I want to look at the future, I got to ask it because I've been thinking about it in this whole discussion. When he talked about drawing a clear red line, was that a mistake?
Sure. The mistake was not, he made the mistake, and I think it was acknowledged by his staff, but then he didn't choose to back away from it. He didn't reframe it. He stuck to it, and he actually ramped it up over the ensuing months.
If he hadn't made that statement, we wouldn't even be talking about going into Syria. I honestly believe that he made a mistake. He went off the rails. He said, I draw the red line when he was asked by the reporter, and he couldn't backtrack from it.
How many of you believe that because he was trying to protect his own credibility, we are in the situation that we are in right now? Half of you, more than half of you, are you saying that he would risk bombing a country to protect his own?
It happens all the time in history.
Yes, because I say yes because he's a politician like most of these politicians. The only reason why Boehner came on board is because he got an invitation from the president, you know, to give approval for the war. That's what this is all about.
Do you understand how crazy, how radical this sounds?
Yes.
The more that they talk about it, the more divisive it becomes, and the more that we learn about what Americans really think about this president, this country, and their future.
And coming up next, it is something that many of us were asked this week. Do you feel safer today than you did 10 years ago? Well, Frank Luntz will pose that question to the group right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back to the special edition of Hannity, featuring a special focus group of bipartisan Americans. Time to go back to D.C. and check in with Frank Luntz, who has a very important question for the voters.
In conversations about budgets, very often national security is not discussed. But we've been asking Americans like you, do you feel safer or less safe now than you did 10 years ago? So why don't you answer that question for me as a way to begin this conversation? How many of you feel safer today than you did back 10 years ago? Raise your hands. 2, 4, 5, 6, maybe 8 of you. Who feels less safe? Okay, tell me why.
Leadership, because who's in charge, whether it's Republican, Democrat, they're very hard to trust. A lot of mistrust. So even the question of, you know, enough spending, well, it's hard to trust that they're going to spend it properly. So I don't know, spend more, spend less. I don't trust the people who are in charge.
Do you feel safer or less safe?
Less safe.
Why?
For similar reasons. I just don't believe that they've kept their eye on what the strategic interests of the country are, what is important, the countries that are threats to us today. It hasn't gotten less. The respect of the countries around us that are our allies and our enemies has reduced. Our allies cannot depend upon us, I think, and our eviscerating are not afraid of us.
You agree with that?
Less safe. They're chopping the budget. We can't do as much. We can't protect ourselves on as many fronts. They're eviscerating the military.
We're just living in a different time, and the enemy is gaining huge technological advancements.
Who's the enemy?
Well, I mean, our enemies.
Who?
Are the terrorists. I mean,
the terrorists. That's kind of a general thing.
Well, I'm specifically talking about the Islamic regime. That's in
my
part
of the issue. It's hard to know who the enemy is.
Yes, but a lot of it is that's where it's coming from.
I mean, in Syria, so if we support the rebels, we're supporting some Al-Qaeda. Part of the rebels against the Syrian government are, I've heard, 60%. I mean, it's hard to get good information.
It is true.
It's hard to know who the enemy is.
It's difficult to know who the enemy is. The reason why I don't feel less safe than I did before is because I think less was discussed, less was talked about. This issue of terrorism, and that has been with us even before the 70s. I don't think the situation has changed that much. And our spending in military is so much more than anywhere else in the world I'm not threatened.
I think the real issue is that with our elected officials, it's more of not only trust, but of their own special interests. They can't make rational decisions. They don't make realistic decisions. And it's not only just based on the budget, but what is best for the country.
Who's they?
Our elected officials, members of Congress.
Do you blame Congress for this?
Yes, I do.
But the president's the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, the president is the commander-in-chief.
So why do you blame Congress?
Well, I didn't vote for him, so I guess I should put him in that spiel as well. But I look more specifically at the elected officials because they have the power to make the decisions that really impact upon us, and they're not doing that.
Go ahead.
But somebody before said our enemy now are the terrorists, and we need more high-tech stuff to go after them, to monitor them. It's a different type of war, and every time we have a budget, they have a peace dividend. They always cut the military. They never raise it back up.
So you're nervous that they're not spending enough?
I believe they need to spend more money in the military.
Who thinks?
I don't.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's not the idea of how much they're spending, it's how they're appropriating the funds and where it's going.
You guys agree with that?
Yes.
Is this government today investing in sufficient technology? You're nodding your head no.
You need to put 500,000 people in Afghanistan instead of 35,000 well-trained troops? I think you can think you can be more effective doing it that way.
Go ahead.
I see way too much we're still using World War II era base mentality where we put ourselves. We're not taking advantage of the full.
Wait, Jason, go ahead.
Power. The technology is the lie. The technology does not protect you. It's the manpower, and the money that's being spent in the Department of Defense is going to worthless weapon systems like the V-22 Osprey and other crap that congressmen keep getting checks to support.
We have the technology, but they're also using it against us. NSA, there was no denial about what Snowden said. They didn't deny what he said. They're using it against Americans.
Go ahead, in the back.
Politicians know what to do.
But see,
I think we've been more politicized since 9/11.
But see, I don't think it's.
Hold on, go ahead.
They don't know what to do. They're fighting against each other rather than pulling together as Americans.
So my question to you is Congress making the right investments to provide you? Why not?
Because they don't know how to make rational decisions.
Because
no, they don't.
They're professional politicians.
Because they keep spending.
They don't know how to make rational decisions. We have all this money. We have a budget. Why are we at a deficit? I don't understand
where people are supporting the politicians instead of spending money where it can be effective.
It all starts from the top.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of walking backwards, trying to follow this president, and I can only imagine how the military must feel. There's a reason why leaders lead from the front. And so we all know where we're going. If we don't know where we're going, how in the hell are we going to get there?
I hope that the people in Washington are listening, because we certainly cannot afford to make any mistakes. If something goes wrong in national security, it's not a Republican tragedy or a Democratic tragedy. It's an American tragedy. This debate over national security is going to be waged in the months to follow, and let us hope that they have the good common sense of good Americans.
And when we come back, the group turns its attention to another critical and controversial national security issue, that being immigration reform, as Hannity continues. One issue that has not gotten a lot of media attention recently is immigration, but just because the debate has been pushed out of the headlines does not mean it's going away. We check back in with Frank Luntz and his focus group of American voters.
There isn't a more contentious debate in America today than the debate over immigration. The battle between those who want small reforms, those who want a significant overhaul, and some who don't want any change at all. It's a very tough conversation, and people's tempers are flaring all across the country. I want to begin with an ad, and I want you all to dial test it. So grab your dials, and you're going to react second to second. Then I'm going to ask you whether this ad truly connects to you in the discussion about immigration. Let's take a look.
A porous border threatening our security, while millions live in de facto amnesty because Washington does nothing. Our borders and workers aren't fully protected, and America is losing the global race for talent. Our immigration system is broken, and doing nothing isn't working. Congress must act now to build an immigration system that benefits America. Because if they won't act, guess who's the only one who gets to decide?
Raise your hands if you thought that ad was effective. Okay, so most of you, and by the way, most people don't agree on anything. Why was that ad so effective?
Because it didn't point fingers at anyone. It wasn't very partisan. It was a general concept of we have this problem that we need to deal with, and as a country we need to come together, look at our leaders in Congress to solve this problem.
Can I ask you a question?
Oh, yes.
What's wrong with pointing fingers? What's wrong with holding people accountable?
Because whenever you do that, people get into that defensive measure and saying, oh, it's not my fault, and want to fight, fight, fight. Rather, it's more of an easier way to present a problem.
Go ahead.
We should point fingers. I mean, obviously, there's a problem that needs to be fixed.
I think we're past pointing fingers, and we should just be looking for solutions.
That's why that ad was effective. It went to that very issue. It went to that very issue. It said, we're trying to fix this issue. We're not trying to put blame on it. Everybody knows the situation here. It's not a big surprise.
We point fingers on everything, and not get anywhere.
And they're using the word illegal like it's a cuss word these days. Yeah. It's got to stop.
No, I think we need to use the word illegal because these people are illegal.
I agree. No, I believe they're illegal, but they're saying that you shouldn't even use it.
These people are illegal, and we are not going to handle this problem by soft-stepping this issue. These people need to get to the back of the line, they need to speak English, and they need to do the things that are necessary.
No, the personal opinion, they don't need to get online at all. I grant you can't have to ask anywhere from 12 to 20 million people to leave. Give them some kind of legal status. Citizenship? Never.
There's a law on the books. And that law is that employers have to check. If you actually arrested an employer who's hiring illegals, you'd have an answer.
There's two separate issues. And until we fix the first issue, which is securing the border, there's no sense in going to the second issue.
It's not securing the border. Most of the illegal immigrants just simply overstay their visas, and we never track them down, or we arrest them and say, come back to court in 6 months, and they don't show up, and nobody goes after them. So if you don't have an enforcement regime, there's no deterrence.
Well, they're here now because they got through the border.
No deterrence.
They didn't come through the border. Like I said, they came on visas. They came here legally and overstayed. What about those people?
About the word illegal. You can't go to any other country and stay there and you don't have citizenship status. That's one reason why we're over budget. We have a lot of problems, and these people do not bring any economic incentive or whatever. We need to start taking care of Americans. Americans need jobs, and we need to start hiring Americans.
So are you going to deport them?
I think they should be. I'm telling you.
You're going to deport them?
Yes, they should be.
Does this woman sound compassionate to you?
No.
Why did you get so angry?
No, because see, it's not being angry. It's a sense of using our common sense. I mean, I go across the country, and I'm sick and tired of Americans talking about taking care of everybody else but Americans. We pay the tax bill.
You guys agree?
No. We pay the tax bill, but we get very little benefits.
It's back to leadership.
That's right.
It's back to leadership. These people are just trying to survive, a lot of them, and it's the leadership that did the policy that allowed them in. These people are just, many of them, are trying to help their families.
I am absolutely appalled that we're sitting here talking about these numbers like they're not human beings who are in this country and part of our society.
So tell her. Tell her.
Okay, they are human beings, but see, I can't wrap my arms around the fact that when someone is here illegal, that is a crime. I mean, come on. These people came here illegal ahead of other folks who are in line.
I do illegal things every day. I sped on my way here. That's a crime too.
Wait. I want everyone to notice that Holly does illegal things every day. What other illegal things?
Will this be on TV? And also, you know, there's the issue of the children of these people. I mean, these people have families, and they're escaping really horrific situations. There are Americans who are milking the system worse than some of our illegal immigrants are, who just want a better life.
Okay, but we can't be responsible for what's happening in their country. You know, quite frankly, some of these people need to, every tub stands on its own.
But what does the Statue of Liberty represent?
If they are here legally, I don't have a problem with that. It's the fact that they're here illegally.
My grandparents came here to get away from discrimination in Europe, but they came here legally. They went through the system, they came over, they got a job, they learned English so that their children, my parents, could be good Americans, and now I'm an American.
There's more to it than that.
If the standards of getting into this country was consistent, no matter what country you came from, I can buy that. Right. How is it that some people get into this country easier? The time period, the waiting time period is shorter for some countries than others.
How does it make you feel?
And also,
when you hear this conversation, when you hear this conversation, how does this make you feel?
It's horrifying to me that people would behave like and just treat other human beings like this. This is far more complicated, and getting immigration status in the United States is very, very difficult, and it costs a lot of money, absolutely, to do it. And the questions on the citizenship test are very
Okay. We're not going to solve it here.
Right.
But you have just proven my point that Holly breaks the law, and that immigration is probably the most contentious issue.
Yeah.
And we're going to be debating it over the coming weeks and months, and all we're going to ask for is one thing: civility, as we debate this issue and others. Back to you.
And that is all the time we have left this evening. As always, thank you for being with us, and I hope you have a great weekend.